financial objectives. Okay, what are the financial aims? These are the goals that the financial functional area in a business will set. So these are the overall goals that they want to achieve, such as reducing costs, maybe improving their cash flow, or maybe increasing their profitability. Now, to achieve those aims, you need to set what are called financial objectives. Now, these are the targets that the financial functional area sets that can enable them to achieve those aims that you saw previously. Now, these objectives need to link to the corporate objectives that are set, because this is only for the financial functional area. Typical financial objectives you'll see are things such as cash flow targets, cost minimization targets, return on capital employed targets or ROCE, or shareholder return targets. So let's have a look at some cash flow targets. Typically you may get cash flow targets such as to reduce the overdraft by X amount of pounds before the end of the year. You may wish to spread out your costs more evenly throughout your year to improve your cash flow position, maybe so you don't rely as much on overdraft borrowing. You may want to spread out the collection of revenue more evenly throughout the year. This could be a way of maybe taking out seasonality again and trying to reduce the dependency on an overdraft. Or you may set a target to maintain a minimum cash balance so you don't actually go overdrawn in the first place. Cost minimization targets. Firstly, let's look at what is meant by the term cost minimization. It's quite simple. It just means reducing your costs. So all the targets here are based around cost reduction. So you might have targets such as reduce the raw material cost by a certain percent. Of course, then you've got to think about the impact that may have on the quality of the product and your brand reputation. Always think of the assessment part. So think about the analysis. What's the knock-on effect? Be evaluative in the answers you produce. Reduce the level of waste in the organisation. So that's basically becoming more efficient. Reduce the wage cost per unit. Now that may lead to you investing, so spending a little bit more money in, say, capital intensive production machinery rather than using labour intensive production that you might be using at the moment. You may want to improve your efficiency to reduce your variable costs. Again, that links probably in with the one we saw before, and also links in with the reducing of wastage as well. Or you may want to consider relocating to a cheaper site. So this could be something that maybe in the long term may become cheaper. Maybe you're offered a grant, for example, to move to a new location. Or maybe your current location isn't the ideal and optimal location for your organisation at the moment. And then we have these things called ROCE targets, return on capital employed. Now ROCE is basically a measure of what you're getting in return for your investment in the business. So the money you invested, what you're getting back as a percentage. Now typically you're going to have three levels of targets for ROCE. You're going to want to improve on last year's ROCE figure. That's quite important. You're probably going to want to achieve an ROCE figure higher than the national average, so what people in the industry suggest is meant to be the achieved figure. And you also are going to want to achieve a figure that's higher than your competitors to show you're performing better than your rivals. Shareholder returns. Keeping shareholders happy is a really important element of business, because shareholders invest in your business. They buy shares. And when they're buying shares, they're giving you free capital. That's money that you can use to invest and grow your business without having to pay any interest on. So that is really good for a business organisation. Now typically your targets are going to focus around the dividend. Now remember, that's what shareholders get at the end of every year for being a shareholder, a share of the profits, a dividend. So obviously we want to give them an increased dividend per share. That means they get more back for each share they own. So in other words, the business has made increased profits. They're going to be like that. Shareholders are happy when they're getting more back for what they've invested in your business. They may look to have an increased dividend yield. Now this is like a measure of the performance of the business over a sustained period of time. It's a percentage, and it looks really about investment levels. So the safe option is to put your money in the bank, but you might only get 3 or 4% for that. Whereas if the dividend yield is increasing, say 7, 8, 9, 10%, then that shows you the growth of the organisation over a period of time. It shows you how it's growing, how it's performing in a longer period. And for shareholders, that's great to see, because it shows their investment is being used to grow the business and make their money worth more money. So it's a long-term investment for the shareholders. And again, the longer they invest in the business, the more money you've got in the business, the more you can keep growing and developing your organisation. And then lastly, you've got increasing the value of the shares. Now, short-term shareholders like this, because obviously this is growing the share price. So if they buy today at £1 and they sell at £1.50, they've made 50p per share. And again, it's a sign of a growing business. The share price tends to increase when the organisation is doing well. Okay, we're going to look at one of the most important elements of this presentation, where we've got to get the linkages. You need to make sure the financial objectives link back to the corporate objectives of the organisation, enabling the organisation to achieve its overall objectives, those corporate objectives. So the financial function layer needs to make sure that their objectives do achieve these. So what I'm going to do in a minute is get you to pause the video, but I want you to go at this first before you do it. So what financial objectives would help to achieve the corporate objective of increasing profit by 10% over the next year? So what you want to do is pause the video, jot down some ideas, and then we'll have a look at some answers in a minute. So pause the video now. Okay, let's have a look at some answers then. Okay, you should have some answers hopefully from the last activity. Now remember, the answers below are only suggested answers. There are many answers that are probably applicable, and you've probably got different ones than I've got. I've tried to think the logical ones that you come up with, and I maybe thought of some curveball ones that maybe some of you very exclusive people out there may have thought as well, who've got a brain just like mine. So I asked the question, what financial objectives would help the business to achieve its corporate objectives of increasing profit by 10% over the next year? So you could have said reducing the use of the overdraft, because if you do that, then you're going to reduce your borrowing costs, you're not going to pay as much in interest, which means that your costs will fall overall. You could have said managing your creditor debtor days more effectively, or managing your suppliers and your customers, so making sure that you collect money in from your customers quicker, your debtors, so get it in there when it's promptly on time, so you're not going to have to borrow any money, and pay your creditors after you've been paid, so you're not going to need to borrow money to pay them as well. So of course it's like debtor days and creditor days if you look later on in this unit. Reduce your production costs, so you may want to look at reducing variable costs, or reducing the improving the efficiency of the organisation. You might want to reduce wastage. Again, self-explanatory, it's going to save you money. Or maybe a little curveball here, you might want to increase the share price. Because if you increase the share price, then that means you're going to get more shareholders buying into your business. So because they're going to buy shares in your organisation, that means that you can use that money to invest. Remember, that's free money, no interest on that. So in theory, by showing investment, you might be able to buy some more machinery, some capital-intensive production, which then makes you more efficient. It's going to reduce your wastage, which then again means that you can make more items. So then you're going to get an economy of scale. You see where I'm going with this? Linkages shows I understand the topic, I understand the unit, I can link the knowledge together. High-level candidates do that. So don't feel bad if you're doing that. That's great. You want to get into the habit of making those linkages. And last but not least, external influences. Now you need to be aware that you can set all the aims and objectives you want to set, but fundamentally they are governed by external factors. These are things that can get in the way of your organisation. Now we've got these things called pestle factors. You'll look at them in more detail in one of my presentations. You can just Google it, type it into YouTube, it'll turn up I'm sure somewhere. So you've got your political factors, you've got your economical factors, you've got your social factors, you've got your technological factors, you've got your legal factors, you've got your environmental factors, and then of course I've thrown in there at the bottom, you've got to consider your competitors. What do your competition do? Because at the end of the day, your competitors are going to have a massive effect on your organisation. And these factors are going to play out on how well you perform. Okay, that's it. You should now be aware of the financial objectives that an organisation can set and how these link with the corporate objectives. You should be able to form some decisions using this information and make these linkages. That is critical to being able to use this knowledge successfully. Okay, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can tweet me any areas of business that you want me to cover in the future, and check out my website for more resources, BeeBusinessBee.co.uk.